Thank you, Prasanth, PK, for joining us. Uh, as I mentioned at the beginning, yesterday was, Tesla Day. Uh, there's lots going on in the auto industry. So we have, I'm told, some 25 odd minutes. We'll try and sort of cover various aspects of what's happening in the space around us. One in the auto sector particularly, and also what's happening in the larger ad tech space and how this year is likely to pan out. If I may, get going, PK, you released the TYNY report last week. The numbers last 2 years have been very mixed for the industry. Growth has been kind of tepid, lesser than expected. We also do the Pitch Medicine advertising report. I think both years, 2023 and 2024, the final number growth achieved is some 4-5% lesser than what was projected at the start of the year. Why don't you just take us through the numbers in terms of how growth has been and how this year is looking for the ADEX?
Okay, first of all, it was lovely hearing Vivek telling the entire EV story. It is a lot of effort that has gone into this transformation of that category. And I wish all the best for every player in the auto category, right? Okay, coming to the ADEX, it's a very fundamental question that, what you're asking question is that why are we having to witness a lot of uncertainty in the advertising, industry? I think it's true. I mean, we go back to 2020, which is the pandemic year, and where we probably saw one of the, lowest, or obviously because of the, challenges we had during the COVID time. And the year 21 and 22, we saw a large exponential growth as far as the market is concerned. And this growth happened from across different shapes of the industry, right? You have the organized sector, you have the large top 12 to 15 categories playing, similarly subcategories, as well as SMB businesses across the country, right? This applied to multiple formats in different forms. We saw the acceleration of digital business, moving from, just branding to performance and many more aspects, from commerce to, influence in marketing, and just the lines just went on and on, as far as the entire expansion of digital, services as part of a source of marketing for multiple categories. But the fact is also that during those times, there was an immense amount or a larger portion of contribution from the startup technology organization, right? There are some quarters where we saw almost 35 to 40% contributed by those companies. And that really played in the growth over in 21 and 22. And we are talking about growth on top of that for 23 and 24, one factor. I think the other factor is, the basis went multiple, right, across all media in those 2 years, as well as some of the categories had a lot more challenges in terms of, not just the demand, but also from a supply perspective, right? I mean, auto is a great example of how they live on a daily basis, from a consumer experience to generating demand, as well as the supply challenges which is there, right? Similarly, there were many other categories. All this led to, along with some of the event-based seasonal changes through the calendar. You had an IPL happening towards the last quarter in 22, versus an IPL coming back in 23, split between first half and second half, and 24 IPL coming there. IPL is a large event, from the context of marketing, expenditure that happens in the country. Example, you had a World Cup, which had an ODI World Cup, a T20 World Cup, different formats, different number of days, etc. Right? Cricket was a large component when it came to advertising expenses, right? You also had the kind of expenses which was getting skewed more into the commerce aspect. Now, all of this obviously brings in a lot more changes, and it was obviously a never normal state for the entire industry, right? And that's probably why you are seeing challenges in 23, 24. So clearly, one is the entire startup money just getting out, and you're trying to build on top of that. Shape of recovery in different forms. different medium formats playing differently, digital being expanded, TV having its own opportunity and challenges from a technology perspective, FTA coming in and so on, right? Print, the recovery came from a completely different shape because retail started helping them, right? So all of this adds to that. But I must tell you that, we have estimated for 25, 7% growth for the country, right? And that's also more skewed from a long tail SMB business, right, which is coming. It's a tad lesser than the global growth, right, which was the same case as last year. But I must tell you, if I look at respective media growth, and compared to global growth, we are actually growing better than every single medium growth globally. Now, therefore, the question is then why is it still overall lesser? Is mainly because globally 80% of the advertising expenditure is on digital, and we are 60%, right? So the relevance of other media is still continuing to play in our market, right?
Right. We'll come to digital. I think that requires a full-fledged session. Since we're here, to discuss auto marketing today, and GroupM works with one of country's largest auto producers, Maruti, and auto is a very, of course, a very high involvement category, and it's also very interesting categories with, price points spread across the entire spectrum, and Maruti is the best example of that. For agencies such as yours, who are, used to working with, say, a lot of fast-moving goods and, consumer durable companies who have cycles of, every quarter, versus, say, gearing yourself to work with a company which has, 3-4 year planning cycles, like what Vivek was saying. What are the challenges you face when you, for example, when Maruti came on board with GroupM, what were the sort of challenges you faced in terms of setting up the kind of infrastructure to, work with a client like this?
No, obviously, we're blessed that we work with Maruti, right? I'm quite delighted and excited to continuously strengthen that. Likewise, we work with multiple other players also, right? And as you mentioned, in different categories as such. I think challenges are quite similar, but at the same time, if I were to call out some of the distinctive aspects, I think auto is a far sophisticated and evolved category. And I must tell you because I think they took the plunge of moving into digital side in a much bigger form and maybe even much earlier than many other categories, right? They also moved into the data-led marketing in a very intense manner, right? Now, as I mentioned, it's a category where it needs to continuously, evolve on the consumer learning, and therefore the significance of personalization, use of different platforms and consumer understanding become more and more critical, right? At any point in time, like if you look at the calendar year 24, the sources say that probably the entire category had a 9% growth, right? Technically, if you look at it, it's probably almost as 2/3, which is probably belonging in two-wheeler. If you look at the entire auto sales in a year, and the second one is four-wheeler, where PV becomes a larger contribution. And then you have probably on the three-wheeler aspect. But net, you're actually talking about selling about 1.8 to 2 lakhs of units in a month, right? Now, that's not an easy job, right? Because the challenges don't get only in the area of finding demand and supply, as we mentioned, because it also has economic factors playing into it. This is a category where where used market is of relevance because that's how the entry expansion happens in this category. There's a category where convenience has just been looked at from technology, entertainment aspects, and including parking and so on features, for example. So it's obviously fused with many more sophisticated challenges. So learning that, understanding that aspect from consumer perspective and how the market will evolve is obviously an exciting challenge to have. I think that happened to us. I think the team came along. Today we don't distinct our team versus the client's team. We're one team. And we're trying to do our best, right? Every day is a new day, and it's a very exciting category.
One of the things I notice is that, there's this perennial debate about performance versus branding, across many sectors, especially that debate is very sort of heated in the FMCG space. If you look at the auto industry, uh, companies in the auto space sponsor, IPL, Champions Trophy is starting soon, I'm told. Some big auto companies are sponsoring that. So they do really high impact, top of the funnel initiatives and also drive bottom of the funnel performance things. And as you can see from their ad spend, like I mentioned at the beginning, it's almost equally split between TV, print and digital, which is very unusual if you look at, there's no other category, no other sector in the top 10, 12 at least, which has, still, almost 50, 60% going on, legacy media, so to say. Obviously, driving performance is a result of, how you build your brand, and auto is a sector which can teach a lot. Are there any learnings that, you have from having worked with auto companies such as Maruti and many others that are very relevant for, categories such as FMCG?
Uh, Definitely. I think there is obviously cross-learning from every category to the other, right? Um, as you said, there is as an outcome or output, there is a balance of performance and branding in this category, right? It only signifies that the relevance of both plays more, uh, more important and more critical for growth or source of growth for this category, right? At the same time, it is also dependent on product features. So ability to make people aware on multiple aspects of what the offering is very critical. As much as, experiencing, like test drives are very fundamentally important, right? So the distinction of categories from CPG to this, you understand, right? But today, we have seen how influencer marketing is becoming more critical. And it plays a role in both the categories in many forms. And it has expertise coming from experiences and experts, which is actually making people to get closer to the subject and learn from it, right? I'm not saying it's still a substitution to test drive, right? But that's how it's playing and evolving in multiple categories. All of this, when I look at it, these are all cross-learning and how it can be helped, right? Obviously, reach is an important aspect for any category from that context. But at the same time, engagement and how do you make the attention play a critical role in every role of formats of media becomes very critical when it is auto, right? And actually today, every touch point is a media touch point. Every transaction point is a media touch point. So sometimes I feel the vehicle itself is a media touch point. So all of this is evolving, and that plays a role in both branding and performance. And likewise, for any category today, both is a critical play.
Since I, also mentioned at the beginning, auto is a high involvement category, right? Nobody watches 20-minute YouTube videos if you're going to buy a shampoo or if you're going to change your brand of shampoo, but you certainly do that if you're going to buy a car. And, content, influencer marketing have become, huge areas of interest for, brands, especially relevant for auto categories. And there are many challenges there because, the amount of misinformation online, just the sheer fragmentation of information. If you want to go and buy a new 20 lakh rupee car, there are thousands of videos perhaps available, all talking in different languages, giving you different sorts of information. So how do you navigate this sort of information minefield when you work with a, company like Maruti, which has, dozens of models and, to create content? How do you kind of, approach content curation? Because that is one of the things that drives the digital narrative agenda for a lot of brands today.
Yeah, so this is obviously a trend not just specific to auto category, right? I think there's a lot of data available. What we do with the data is more significantly important, right? And these are days where data clean rooms are becoming more critical, and you will see more of that happening in the country. These are days where AI and Gen AI is playing a critical role in most of the tools that is helping you to get insights, not just from consumer aspect of what you want to do, but also about deploying the investment back to targeting consumers. There are also days where you have every formats of content, and the agility and the speed with which you have to use in multiple formats become critical. Long format, short format, even including a email perspective, right? I think we obviously take help of a lot of technology aspect in helping us to design how to get the omni-channel marketing using multiple content displays, and that's something which the team does quite effectively. Obviously, it comes from multiple AI-related tools and other aspects. But I think this omni-channel marketing is only going to expand more. And for a category like auto, it becomes very, very critical, right? And you said it that probably the starting point is how to look at content and how to, clearly design content for different mediums and how fast we are able to bring in the relevance factor more and more, right? And it's a cycle. Therefore, learning the consumer, continuous learning of consumer and applying back becomes critical.
Uh, I'll come back to, Maruti as an example. That is the most famous brand GroupM is working with. It's been a little more than a year since you've been working with Maruti now. What are the sort of, anything interesting you want to tell us? Some work that you've done with Maruti, which has been sort of, brought in a lot of good quality learning to your company as well as to the client and has created significant impact. Anything that stands out?
No, obviously, the team has been at it in multiple forms, right? A lot of personalization and a lot of work done on omni-channel marketing is something which we have been at it, right? It's it's quite a busy calendar for multiple versatile portfolios of, Maruti itself. And Amin and team has been at it to look at, from context of impact versus always on versus relevant cohorts targeting and so on. This is a journey which also sees significant prioritization from, different versatile subcategories within it, right? So therefore, tapping into getting growth for each subcategory becomes very distinctive, right? And we are currently focusing on how do we create that aspect of distinction and find more and more growth. Quite exciting, Nawal, the journey has been. There are more stories, but I'll leave it to Amin to, somewhere share those things.
We'll catch hold of Amin to know about more case studies. I remember December 2023 at our marketing technology conference, the then executive director and head of marketing of Maruti, Shashank Srivastav, spoke about Nexa as a brand and how marketing technology is kind of such an integral part of how they are doing their brand building activities. I want to ask you as a media services company, while agencies are looked as advertising partners primarily, but you cannot contribute enough unless you have a full view of the marketing technology stack. And for agencies, it's also important to now build capability across various aspects of MarTech, which would include creating how do you create and utilize first-party data platforms, how do you upsell, how do you resell, and so on and so forth. So what are agencies like GroupM doing to kind of get into that space where you go beyond just advertising targeting and buying media at the best price to really look at various other aspects of the marketing funnel?
No, as I said, this is again coming to the space of data-led marketing and how we use those profiles to help you decide how to target the consumers, not just target, but with what to target the consumers. I think we have been strengthening the entire profile bench, right? The entire stack, with not just media partners, but multiple different versatile category partners. And that's becoming critical more and more because it just helps in enriching the profiles in a better form to target them better, right? Use of AI has been a very significant change when it comes to WPP, for us. And we have been working on it for a couple of years. We have a lot of cases, which is the proof of the pudding on that and how it's been helping. So that's one. I think a large enriched partnership program is very critical, where it's not just media, but there's technology, there is transaction, there is payment, there's travel, and so on, right? Now, all of this becomes very critical to enrich in the FPD aspect from any category, right? I think talent becomes very critical here, right? It's just not to analyze, but also from a data perspective. As I said about DCR, working with different partners on creating more DCR for respective clients, and how analytically we can be real time. So that's again a focus which we've been doing, having a lot of diverse talent coming into the organization. I think from the context of how clients are really moving on this, we see a progress on that. If you had asked this question 2 years back, probably a couple of clients, but we have more than double-digit clients who are already in, right? Which is again a great progress for this. It just means that the new era of marketing is, slowly, progressing with a different momentum, right? So all of this keeps us exciting. What also we do is a lot of sharing of learning, not just from India, but globally, right? And how, if you look at even auto comes as one of the top 3 countries. India is one of the top 3 countries as far as auto category is concerned. I think we just beat Japan, about a couple of years back. Now, therefore, it is equally important to know how, from a category lens, how it's happening in multiple, different parts of the world. We've got a close-knit team where learnings have been taken and been applied onto that. So that's again another factor which plays a larger role in shaping this.
Fantastic. Since we are in the last segment of this conversation, I'd like to circle back on what's happening with ADEX and the projections for this year, because that's an area of interest for all agencies and media partners alike. Digital, of course, is growing at a much faster pace than any other legacy media. Do you see any perils of digital now is almost 65% of the overall ADEX
60%.
and expected to grow even further? What is the flip side of this growth that you see?
No, I think it just gives an opportunity for other media to think harder. So first point is that. I don't think today, like we can speak like 10 years back, that there is a digital thing. Everything is almost digital, because digital plays across every part of the content produced by multiple media formats. In print, there is a digital platform. I think radio, audio, there is a digital platform. So in every form, there is an aspect of digital playing. But I think what has also happened is the expansion of digital in different ways. Like, you have a video, audio, a commerce, right? A quick commerce, right? So a social, a search, different ways of formats which have come. And that's a learning which I think we should look at how to embrace or how to do even better in other media, right? Otherwise, I feel the source of incremental growth, especially if you look at last 2 years, have been mainly coming from the long tail, as
SMB
well
clients,
as
yes.
as well as
SMBs,
as well as most of the incremental has been going towards digital platforms. And if we have to strengthen other media, then we have to come with those solves. It could be a tech solve. If you look at TV perspective, there's a tech solve required, right? TV is still vital. There is no doubt about it. But if we have to get a larger portion of the incremental addicts, then we have to come with certain solves on that. The same thing goes with other media also. And probably, it's again a hypothetical statement, I have no proofs for that. If we can do it far more better, then I think the pace of growth can be even more. I'm putting in optimistic form, right? Because the corollary is, if you don't do all of this, and if it goes, the pace of growth may continue to be in single digit, right? Now, the other way to say it, because this is again not a buoyant market, right? We have seen how we have had double-digit growth in ADEX in 21, 22, and even earlier. It's certainly not one of the lowest, but at the same time, single digit, from that context. Now, if you need to get back to those, then there are only two forms. One is demand has to come forward, and which means economic factors should play onto it. I'm hoping that second half of this year, we should see some of the tax benefits and all playing into and, skewing or accelerating consumption from that context. But again, wait and watch. Or you need invention, you need innovation from other media to really push it up, right? I hope that satisfies your question.
Last one, I can't let you go without asking you about IPL. IPL arguably is what, 5% of, 4% of ADEX or thereabouts, right? And how IPL does, of course, determines also how growth in the, overall space is taking shape. What's your prediction on IPL this year? This is the first year when Jio and Star have combined, right? There's no competition between digital and TV anymore, like was the case, last 2 years when they were at each other's throat. What do you think is going to happen on IPL from an advertising point of view?
IPL continues to be one of the critical and very, useful platform for multiple categories. So there is no doubt about that. I am no astrologer here, but when I look at multiple categories, there is obviously, a good thinking, good preparation on how to use that platform. I feel it will be again a good productive year to see more and more brands coming and testing it out, right? I'm hoping that the matches get more exciting this time. Therefore, it continues to grow. That's something for us to wait and watch. The team coming together, I think it's a great opportunity, right? That's it.
I hope so. And, there is this chart I remember that was presented at one of the conferences we did recently, that GDP growth and ADEX growth kind of moves lock in step. Last 2 years, that kind of, sync has broken. I hope the, last 2 quarters of tepid growth in the economy will kind of come back to an upward trajectory and we'll see better growth this year, which will mean growth for IPL, which will mean growth for, advertising agencies and, all the other media platforms. Thank you, PK. I see time is up. Thank you for a insightful,
Thank you.
Nice conversation. I'd like a big round of applause for Prasanth Kumar for taking time out to do this conversation. Thank you.